having learned what you've learned now about the tech world and looking back at fashion, what do you think fashion needs? Because I'm of the opinion that fashion actually it's pretty backward and not as innovative as they'd like to think that they are. I think there's so many tricks that they're missing, like most fashion brands. Like even some of the stuff you were saying that you're doing, I don't see most small brands doing it.
Yeah, no, I'm completely of the same opinion. I think so many things are kind of like, I think fashion, what it does is it puts this false belief in like small business owners that this is the one way we do it. One way we do it, this is the correct way we do it, and you need to fit that. And I think that's the difference with how I did it, which was I had spoken, for example, to a UK factory, and I said, okay, I understand how you do it with these big boys and stuff, and they have their processes and stuff. But let's try and limit it down and let's change it because I don't like that. And this is how I work. So for example, they asked me for design patterns and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't have the money to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show up at the factory. You're going to put me in any old bikini or like toile. And I'm going to point to my body as to how I want it to fit. And you're going to draw it on me. Like, this is how we're going to do it. And it worked. And it was completely fine. And we built a block that we then used for the rest of it. And it was a perfect fit. So I feel like being a disruptor is definitely what the fashion scene needs. I think there's a lot of like crap advice going out there that doesn't need to be adhered to. Like, why? Asking the question why is the best thing that I've ever done. Yeah. And I think that's why I probably did so well, which was because the fact that I haven't come from a fashion background. Yeah. So I just learned as I was going, and I realized what's super inefficient, I'm just going to cut out, and what's efficient, we're going to keep in. So yeah, I think the fashion industry needs more disruptors, more innovators, more people to listen to your advice, which I learned a lot from you and your blogs and your videos. I'm a huge fan of your vlogs, and I think it's super efficient to just learn every day from people like you and just ignore what's kind of like standard or stuff that you've learned from a previous, fashion brand that you used to work at. So for example, I did an internship at a fashion brand, which was like a haute couture brand when I was super young. Because that was the time where I loved fashion and stuff. And I just didn't like it. I hated everything they were doing. I thought it was so inefficient. I thought it was such a mess behind the scenes. And one of the things that I wanted to put into Neon Moon was, if we are going to do this, I don't want to create any more chaos in our lives. And I want the chaos to be removed, because one of the best things that I think I ever did was created such a streamlined process that I was like desirable as a customer to the factory, to a point where I remember at like verbatim, the owner of the factory said, "Thank you for placing an order with us. Actually, our seamstresses love to create your items because it's so easy and so clear to them how to make it. So they just get through it and they like meditate somehow towards it." Whilst with other brands, and I think he did name some cheekily, he told me, he was like, they fucking hate making their items like it. And for some reason, there's something in that I can kind of sense when you receive the bulk of the items, because it's never over until you've received it and quality checked it. I can tell that there's a lot more care and love into everything that they do with our garments. So that was a huge point.
What did you do so simple that the machinists loved?
Created processes that were just different to everyone else's. For example,
give me an example, like what?
So for example, like, I don't know, patterns, instead of them spending a year and a day to like create a brand new one, okay, let's use the current one and tweak it slightly, or what can we do? Or listen to what they were saying, is there anything better that you would advise? And luckily, by befriending these people, because I really didn't treat them like, that was the one thing that in fashion I absolutely hated, which was treating manufacturers or factory owners or the seamstresses in the factories as like some sort of resource. Like, they're not human beings. Yeah. So for example, after every single time we did a run, I would send them a big box of chocolates, and I
always talk about this. Like, if someone can remove the ego of the fashion industry, especially in manufacturing, like what designers thinking that they're so much better than the people making their product, and then whining and dining the PR and marketing teams, but treating manufacturers like dogs' bodies. Oh,
yeah, shocking. And the amount of stories that I heard from them as well, because they would say it, they would like hate certain designers or certain people who come to the factory. And I feel like you could tell that, you know, I don't know, you can just sense it in their quality as well. So with me, it was like they would always try and find a slot for me, or they'll be like, hey, we have like some roll of very fancy fabric that a customer no longer wants to use and we now own it. Would you like to use it at a fraction of the cost? They would offer this stuff to me. And that's why I never really spent a lot of time on the front end with like, we never did, you know, schmoozing and all of that stuff. It was more about how can I ensure that the supply chain is as efficient as possible. And when they know that Hayat from the On Moon has placed another order, they know exactly what to do. To a point where we wanted to film them making it, for example, and they were like, we never usually allow this because usually the seamstresses are super shy. But for you, Hayat, we will do this because we love you, you know? And it was like, great, my customers will love to see, you know, the people actually make the garments. And it actually, you know, created more sales.
I'm so glad you're saying this because I often talk about how personal manufacturing is, and that if you develop a relationship with someone and they like you, they would go out of their way to help you. But it's one thing me saying it, you know, and people thinking, oh, because you worked in you know, big brands, blah blah blah. It's another thing you saying it as a small brand.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. It's such a problem. It's such an innate, like, systemic problem, which I don't understand. So, for example, we wanted to change direction. So we want to get a bit more like, after we did our first run, we want to be a bit more sexier. And that's where we're starting to lean towards like silks and like mesh and stuff like that. So in order, because I was like, let me go and see you at the factory and I'll explain what we're doing and, you know, why you can be involved and stuff. I presented it to them with like, I presented like a report on like what we were doing, like an actual meeting that they could flick through this like, you know, document that I had whipped up. And so all of them, the management of this factory had this document that they were reading and I was presenting it and I was trying to get buy-in. And they were like, hey, we've never had this from anyone. Like, we've never had anyone come in with documents, like trying to get us to get involved and like to share what we think and our feedback. And
you mean like show respect and treat them as business people?
That's like, it. Like,
shocking.
Yeah, shocking. They were actually shocked though. Like, removing the sarcasm, they were surprised. And I think that's the one thing that, because small businesses, we know that we're at a disadvantage. We want lower quantity. We don't have enough money to put in like large, you know, orders of these big brands that they have on board. And we can get like shut out if the big brands want more. And then, you know, obviously they're going to be like, no, hey, sorry, we have Harrods coming in with a larger order. But that's why it made it more exciting for them. Because believe it or not, the factories are actually on the sides of the little guys because they can grow with us.
Yeah.
The big guys, they know their power. They will push them on, squeeze them on price and treat them like crap and, you know, be like, oh, we're going to
basically bully them,
harass them to be like, if you don't give us a good price on this, we will go elsewhere and all of that. Whilst the small guys like us can treat them with respect, so then they can grow with us and actually want to be more with us because they don't want these big guys who have the power, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the one thing that I had never seen in any other brands.
Do you know, I really miss traveling to factories. This pandemic is killing me because of the lack of travel, but also not being able to go to factories. I love it. I love meeting people in factories and just chatting and looking at product and all of that.
And last time I visited the factory was like the beginning of 2020, right before the pandemic hit. And yeah, it was very nice to go in there, see what they were doing, see their process. And yeah, usually, and the beauty with factories that believe in you, they will bend the rules. Like they're, you know, it's not even bending the rules. You can create new rules. So for example, initially,
for starters, there's no rules. In fashion, there is no rules.
No, there are no rules. And it's about creating new ones that can be a benefit for you. So for example, there was one like typical rule that they had, which was like, oh, you buy the fabric and all of that stuff up front, and then we'll use it, and you can do a huge run there and then. So I was like, okay, well, what about if, you know, I buy a roll of this very expensive fabric, but we use it over time? So then I can place smaller orders, but in more, you know, it's better for the cash flow and everything, but we've bought the items and it's just sitting in the factory. And they were like, okay, we can do that. So then it gives us more, it gives them more work consistently. So then they just don't have one big chunk.
Is that your UK factory, or was that in China?
UK. In China towards the end, I was actually pretty good in negotiating, where the beauty with China was I didn't have to source anything. They would source it all, right? So it was completely fully factored, which was amazing. A lot of like hassle off the table. And they were great because towards the end, because they knew that we were growing, and there was an element of respect there after a few meetings, because there was a lot of culture for me to learn.
Did you go out to China?
Yeah, I highly recommend going out and seeing it for yourself. And I think there's a bit of difficulty. I knew that I probably should have taken like a man with me. This sounds so bad, but like culturally, I don't think I got enough of like the respect for being a woman. But it is what it is. So yeah, there are no rules, and yeah, I miss it as much as you do. I miss traveling to factories, even though I don't work in fashion anymore.